Hello, everyone. This
We
is
are back.
this is new, right? All of us online at the same time, all the in the hot seat hosts. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new day, new time, and a little bit of a new focus for In the Hot Seat. We are so excited. Yet, if you have been a follower of In the Hot Seat for the past 2 years, you've obviously seen our faces as we interviewed a lot of guests over the past 2 years. This year, for 2026, we decided to take a little bit of a spin. We are still going to have guests on the show, but we're also going to be primarily putting the headlines of what you're hearing online about announcements coming out about products that may or may not have some substance behind it and what's marketing fluff. We're gonna rip that apart week from week and put the headlines in the hot seat. So the news has been hopping, folks. We have a lot to pick from in this last week, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where do we want to start?
I don't know. Where do you want to start?
Oh, I mean, there's ServiceNow, there's Salesforce, there's Google, there's Slack, right? Like, which one should we start with?
Why don't we start with a bit of backdrop to the ServiceNow, Oracle, Salesforce sort of world that we've seen over the last few weeks? Because I keep getting this question, and I'm sure you guys are having this conversation a lot too, because of the fact that the stock market took a severe dump with all the tech stocks over the last 3-4 months, and a lot of that was tied to now everybody's going to go recode their vibe code their ERP system on the weekend, and nobody's going to buy software anymore, which is a bit insane. But anyway,
which is a load of BS.
That would be the other thing that I was thinking. Yeah, exactly.
Come on, vibe coding is the end all be all, and so secure and so deployable, like within 3 hours.
Great.
What are you talking about?
It's fine. I can certainly see somebody coding an entire ERP system.
It doesn't need experts anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's a good backdrop
as a product person.
Oh, come on. You're the one who should be leading the vibe code world. What are you talking about? Yeah. But anyway, so I mean, a lot of the stuff that's come up over the last few weeks has been kind of tied into companies trying to get to this narrative and start straightening some of it out. And the whole idea, as Thomas said, is ludicrous, right? I mean, you can't. Yes, you could code some workflow. Yes, you can code small applications, and you could tie some of those together given a few years. But the problem is underneath that, right? The problem is that you're not going to rebuild all the business logic, and you're not going to be able to connect to all those different data pieces and silos that you've built over the last 30 years in your business by just trying to go in and lay an agentic layer across the world. And I think that's the part that is, perhaps the uneducated, unsophisticated view of that has been, oh no, the world's being disrupted. The world's being disrupted, but it's not being disrupted in the way people think. And I think that's the interesting one. And that's part of the reason I say let's give some context, because the ServiceNow one, and then some of the conversations we had this week when I was at a Oracle Analyst Summit event, really tie into this, and it does start to make this make a lot more sense. And Thomas, you and I talked about this before already. I think the fact that I think what's happening is a business model disruption for the software companies, not a oh no, the world doesn't need application catastrophe anymore, because that's just ludicrous, right?
This is basically exactly what caused the face plant that the Salesforce stock too, but in this particular instance, the ServiceNow stock took after presenting numbers that on all measurable KPIs were well exceeding expectations. I mean, I'm an industry analyst, not a financial analyst, but I sometimes would like to smoke what they have.
I'm with you. I've been trying to buy that for years. But I mean, really, the thing is, we've seen this. How long have we, we had these shifts, right? We had this big shift from mainframe to client server, and the world was going to end. And then we had the shift from client server to cloud, and the world was going to end. And then the financial crisis convinced everybody that, in fact, it didn't. The world didn't end. And in fact, The problem was we just weren't paying for things out of the right bucket. And so, we get to this point, we've got all this in place. Yes, true. And then you see ServiceNow's announcement, which was good, and yet it comes out 50% of that came from consumption-based pricing instead of seat-based pricing, and all of a sudden the stock is worthless. I mean, huh? I guess it's a good buying opportunity if you've got extra money laying around. Not that I'm giving any financial advice. I totally.
So is that an indication that the market doesn't feel that kind of revenue is protected enough? Like we can't predict it. Like that doesn't seem to work at all with Wall Street. Like we can't predict revenue because usage might be something that we can't see, and so how the hell do we price that?
Yeah, I mean that is a part of it, and I think there's also that fear underneath that enterprise buyers go, well, I'm not going to buy that way because I can't predict, I can't budget. So what does that mean? Well, to me, it just means that it's incumbent upon us, in the tech world, to figure out some way to provide certain amount of predictability. And you can, usage-based pricing is not new. It just hasn't been widespread. But it does mean that there needs to be some way to budget for this and provide a certain amount of predictability. But at the same time, usage is going up dramatically, and you could see the sales. I mean, the ServiceNow numbers, they were solid numbers from a revenue perspective. So.
Yep.
But I mean, beyond that, as a tech exec, how do I know when I'm using a lot? How do I know when I'm not? Is there a counter somewhere that I can check? Like,
that's actually the problem, Chrissy.
Yeah, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
If I'm a chief product officer and I'm using ServiceNow or Salesforce for some kind of intake, or even Asana for some kind of intake process, how do I know when my consumption is going to spike? What are my people doing that it shouldn't? And by the way, people don't use that.
That's the wrong question, Christy.
That is the wrong question.
Because you do know when your consumption is spiking, because they all have telemetry, all of them, which all of them sooner or later will be directly able to translate into dollars spent and into a forecasting model of dollars spent to be. Hey, they have AI for that, right?
And the thing is, you can meter this, right? It's meter. It is something that's trackable. I mean, it's like saying, how much electricity am I using? We'll go look at the meter.
But think about it from a workflow.
The right question to ask there is, what value do I get out of it? Because consumption and value are two things that are, well, on opposite sides of the scale.
Maybe.
Yeah, but can I clarify the prior question, which is, think about my workflow. Let's say I am a customer success manager or a customer success exec, and I have a team of 18 customer success reps, and they're out there hammering on ServiceNow, doing what they need to do. And all of a sudden somebody sees a feature and says, oh, this will summarize everything that's happened for the last year, and they hit the button summarize. Does that cost me a lot of money? If it does, people don't use that summarize button.
But see, that's an extremely low value use case too. Yeah. So I would argue that, well,
if you're on the phone with somebody in real time,
get prepared.
Yeah.
So this is the same discussion and the same fuzzy argument that I have with my kids regarding social media usage and being online all the time. We can't freaking plan anymore. We are just winging it. And sorry, that's really, apart from this being a very low value use case, this is, again, it's the wrong question to ask. What value do I get out of it? Not what price do I pay for it? So what we as businesses, and that's also here that the stock market indicated, is it's one of two fears. The one is they're cannibalizing themselves, and the other one is that there is a total disconnect between price and value.
Yeah. Although don't let that lead to the next conversation, which is, we should do value-based pricing, because I've been trying to do that for 40 years and it's never worked.
Right. That's been an endless one. Because my people were doing all of this before they hit the AI button. They maybe just had to stay an extra hour to do it.
Yeah,
Well, or
So-
they weren't able to handle as many calls. But my point
Right.
is that when I say it's the wrong question, I say the problem is that you've got to approach this in a way that says what are the value use cases I want to prioritize, and then
Sure.
with the vendor conversation, and how do I measure that consumption so that I can establish a certain flow and understand what that means. If I have 100 calls resolved, that equals a range of X to Y. And if I have 1,000, it's 10 times that maybe. It's going to take a little while to establish a better way to measure it and understand it, and we're going to have to focus more on metrics and metering. But it doesn't particularly change it. I was going to give you a counter example of a vendor response too, because like I said, I was at this Oracle event this weekend, and the second day was a NetSuite event, and NetSuite actually, I haven't looked at their pricing lately, but they always had kind of an interesting combination of pricing. Like they had this sort of base number, and then they added different types of seat pricing because this kind of user was X and this kind of user was 2X and whatever. So it wasn't always the easiest thing to understand to begin with. But my point is they came out and they said, well, we haven't changed our pricing at all. And in Oracle, the value and the model with Oracle has been, we're not going to charge extra for the AI that we've built into our applications. Yes, but when it came down to it, though, they've gone down a path just like Salesforce has with this idea of headless, which means you can connect to any model. That sounds good, except you have to have a license for that model, which means you're paying Anthropic and NetSuite for that use case, not just NetSuite. So we're learning and we're going down this path of trying to sort it out. It's not resolved yet, but even that is okay. Well, now I've got to figure out how I meter and manage my Anthropic relationship, because that's where the variability is going to be.
This seems like a ready, fire, aim scenario, but they're playing with their entire business model.
Yes.
Yeah,
let's get this shiny object into the market, and then we'll figure out whether it's going to kill us or not.
But see, Pete, the problem is that it's shiny, no question about that. But it's shiny because it actually does deliver a lot of value. And if you talk to companies that are doing this, and you dig into the use case, the companies that are approaching this correctly, define their process, look at the workflow, figure out where those high value use case workflow processes are, and then start to layer in those capabilities in that high value workflow. They're seeing lots of value back. I mean, we had several interesting conversations with customers. AT&T was one of them, actually, and a few others, about the value that they're starting to see out of what they're doing with agentic. So the companies are going to see that, and they're going to go, well, I got to have some of that. And the companies that are getting big value out of it, at some point they go, well, within a certain range, I don't care how much the variability is.
Is that a byproduct, do you think, of the fact that companies are weaving AI into their products versus having them built natively on AI? And back to your vibe coding comment.
That's a good question, Chrissy. It is, but here's the problem with that. And so you've got several. This happens in the tech world all the time. If you look in the past, you'll see lots of historical examples of, here's a problem, and this group of vendors came at it this way, and this group of vendors came at it this way, and this group came at it this way, because they all had a different perspective on how to solve the problem. So the argument, and I had this conversation with a lot of end users over the last 3 or 4 months about, well, but shouldn't I just go with OpenAI Frontier? Because that's a platform, I can just build everything on the platform. Yes, but where do you get the business logic that's already built into what you already bought? And how do you connect to all the data that's already there that you already bought? So at least in the short term, it's disintermediation of what you think of as an enterprise app, but it doesn't mean all those functions are going away. They still have to be there. So maybe the UI changes. Yes, it will change. That is going to be agentic for a lot of things you do from a business process perspective. And some of it's going to be a collaboration layer, a collaboration tool, or service bus. I don't know. There's a bunch of different terms that are floating around about it, because you also have to be able to talk human to human, human to agent, agent to agent, and agent to human. All those things have to happen if you're establishing a workflow that includes digital workers and human workers. But underneath that, you still have to execute the business logic that you already own. So if I'm General Electric, and I don't know, they probably have an SAP instance there. So, and I'm going to rip out SAP and put OpenAI Frontier and have my guys go in the closet and vibe code the whole. No. Like that's
In the
that's
closet, I
stupid
love
for
that.
one thing. Well, but it'd have to be a big closet, I guess. But my point is that there's all these things you already have as a business, and so for the foreseeable future, you're going to go down a path that says, I'm going to reposition these things so I can get the most value out of what I already invested and what I can add into that to drive down a workflow that is functional, that will provide additional value.
Oh, we just lost Thomas. He'll be.
He
It looks like
actually
some
is having
technical
audio
issues. He'll be
issues.
popping back in.
I actually booted him because I thought he was going to say something.
Good job, Pete. This is why we keep you around.
So here's a question / is it an opportunity? Is it a challenge for going to this usage-based pricing when you're talking SMBs versus enterprise, right?
I think that's huge. And so I think Michael and Thomas were taking a different perspective than I was. I was coming from an SMB lens.
Yeah.
Right. That's where I play the most. And from an SMB perspective, if it's going to take somebody an extra hour in their day to do something versus cost me an extra $100,000 a year for them to hit a button, they're going to spend the hour.
Actually,
because I don't have the budget to cover it.
Yes, but Christy, what happens when your competitor does go down the path of agentic and they now have 10x the productivity of the staff? They can reduce their staff. They in the end they end up balancing that all out with consumption, and they now can handle 3 times the amount of calls you could handle. They now can close their books in an hour instead of 2 months. I mean, the thing is, the competitive advantage is very large, and yes, it is different, and we're going to have to deal with different for a while. And as humans, we don't like different. I get that, but it is something that is coming, and we're going to have to figure out the right ways to do it, because there is great advantage to gentrifying those workflows and processes.
Whereas I'm with Jody and Christy to some extent there now that I hear again. Because
we should boot you more often.
for SMBs, I think this solution, ServiceNow, is not yet a right fit. That has pricing repercussions, because this thing is just far too big. Yeah.
Right.
And
that's kind of where I was going.
Yeah, but that's a different question, Thomas. That's a different question. It says the solution fit isn't correct. But I mean, I would have argued that with agentic or without agentic, ServiceNow isn't the right fit for some of those SMBs.
Yeah.
Maybe Freshdesk was a better fit.
That's
a large portion of their business.
That's what I say.
Is made up from ServiceNow.
Yeah. And the other part is, I mean, what was the big news of this release? It was like there's 50% is already consumption based of all of our revenues. This is big
for ServiceNow. Yeah,
this is quite big for ServiceNow, and we should applaud them for being the only ones who are that honest. I mean, if you're looking at all the other ones,
they're not the only ones doing it. They're just the ones that are being
And as usual, who is honest gets punished. Yeah, as usual.
Yeah. So, but over time, we're going to learn that how to do this in ways that are manageable from a vendor perspective and from a buyer perspective, and meet somewhere in the middle. Yeah. Is it all consumption based? Is it some sort of consumption bundle? Is it, there are ways to budget and make things more predictable. Yeah. Do you have, true ups, or do you have buy-in bands of, I get this many for whatever? I mean, there are all sorts of different schemes that people are trying. And even what I said with NetSuite, we're going to make our pricing predictable. However, if you're using the agents and you're connecting to Anthropic or Open, or Chat GPT, or you have to pay their consumption-based pricing because that's what they do. That's evolving, but is it pretty? Maybe not, but it is. We're in transition.
Are there better ways? Yes, there are.
I just wonder.
I'm sure there are, yeah. And part of that is just the metering, right? If once you get the metering down and you have the ability to monitor that and understand where the consumption drives and where it adds value, where it doesn't, you're going to learn how to do this with the way you build the processes and layer that in.
Well, when I read the press release, the thing, and going back to the SMB versus enterprise, I thought about it in a couple different ways, right? First, my thought was, okay, well, wait a second. Could this be an opportunity that going to consumption-based pricing versus seat-based pricing actually opens the door for SMBs to have access to solutions they may not otherwise have even entertained, right? That's number one, because now perhaps there is this entry level price package of consumption that's more palatable to me as an SMB. So, right. So now my environment's opening up a little bit more of where I can look for different solutions. The flip side to that, I'm just going to throw out all my questions here because since we're just talking, I want to get them all in. My second question on that, as I read through the press release, was okay. Let's think this through from an SMB who's coming on the scenes. And I was originally thinking about building my solution in a seat license. Now I have to think about this from a consumption-based license, and the SMB side looks very different versus an enterprise player who's pricing that way. So those were my two questions that I'm going to throw out there to this audience.
That's a good question.
Should ignore actually, because who should ignore this is the ones who don't have much negotiation leverage.
But that's
but
just
they
about
do
every
have
SMB.
They do have the capability to choose their solution, and there are alternatives. And that was my point originally. If you're going to look at this and you go, look, I can't deal with this consumption-based pricing right now. So what am I going to do? Well, I can give you two alternatives. One of them, really simple, obvious one, go with Zoho, because Zoho doesn't charge consumption-based pricing, and they have their own models built, and they've sized the models for different types of activities, which is in fact one of the right things to do in this, I think. So there are alternatives, and those alternatives will play out for SMBs, for enterprise, and they will decide that the market will adjust as this happens, right? So, maybe I can't deal with consumption, but then on the other hand, maybe I really I think this is a better competitive solution for me. So I'm willing to go with certain amount of uncertainty because I get more value out of the workflow. So over time that'll play out, and it's just like always. Some people liked seat-based and some people wanted enterprise pricing. And I mean,
well, and the other thing too is an SMB has other levers they can pull in their business model. They don't always have to revert to, it's going to cost me this much. So, everybody else is doing it. I guess I'm going to have to eat the cost. No, they've got 9 other building blocks. They can pull one of those levers as well to differentiate themselves different or apply to a different market that their competitors aren't. So I just am curious to see the impact that this has on ServiceNow's SMB business, having had ServiceNow and been an SMB.
Yeah. I mean, it is going to play out across the different sectors differently, but even inside of them, you can't, I can say enterprise, but what does that really mean? Because, two businesses, no matter how big or small they are, they operate differently, and they're going to make different decisions based on their business model and where they see the opportunity.
And we should be quite honest with it. ServiceNow, although it starts with S, is not exactly an SMB business. So they start in the upper mid-market, actually.
Yeah. So and then the same thing with Salesforce, right? Salesforce, they do scale down to small. They do offer some small, medium business solutions, but they have much more of their business comes from the enterprise.
Yeah.
Well, and if you think about as consumers of said technology, or someone who would be a buyer that you would be marketing to, right? when the AI tools hit the market hot and heavy, and everyone went out and got their license for Perplexity and OpenAI and Claude and Gemini, we all jumped in at consumption-based pricing, but we didn't realize it, right? We just signed up. We're like, give me this for $20 a month or $15, whatever the price was. And we started using something on a consumption-based pricing. And that, to me, is translating over to, okay, I may have been thinking about it that I was buying a seat, but in reality, as soon as my tokens, as soon as I hit the ceiling on those tokens, I realized pretty quickly, oh, wait a second, right? And then I had to change my behavior of how I'm working with that tool. So here's a question. Will consumption-based pricing and potentially the move from more organizations going that way drive more efficiency and proper planning in advance, as opposed to diving in and testing and running tokens, right? One of the things is, go ahead and test, but there's also, could this be an opportunity to change the way we think about the process of building something and working with these tools?
Yeah, no, Chrissy, I mean, and Jody, I said that that you're going to see businesses handle this differently, but there's no blanket answer. Yeah. You're not going to, there's no, this is the right way to do it. There's a right way for you, and you'll try it. If it doesn't work, then maybe the right way wasn't the right way, and you have to do a different right way. But that's the way this has always been with tech consumption. Yep. Where do I see the value? Let me try that. Let me try this model. That model doesn't fit me. I'm going to go with a different model. Yeah. And it's going to shake out over some, short period of time, because as we know, time compression with the AI world is, everything happens in 25% of the time it used to take. But I mean, it is still a learning. This is the period of time of uncertainty. Yes. And you also have lots of alternatives, because it is a period of time of uncertainty. But the base level doesn't change. Define your process, understand your workflow, find the high value points, pick the model that you think you can live with for now, try it. If that's not the one, then you're going to have to look at some alternatives. And measure. Don't forget that. And measure. Absolutely. Measure and decide if that value is there. And if it's not, then you have to go with a different model. That is fine.
It's what we will see in the near future in order to work with that uncertainty is a more rigorous business case planning again.
Yes.
Set objectives and measure against these objectives. And take consequences, probably even personal consequences, if these business cases have been too much fake news.
Well, and Thomas too, the thing is, like, you're correct, but then there's also a group of sloppy businesses, whether they're big or small or medium, that are just going to do it, and they'll see what happens, and some will go out of business, and some will say, "Oh, whoop, that didn't work. I have to do something different."
If they go out of
way
business,
it always
we have a
works.
consequence, which is highly personal.
Yeah, it is.
So, guys, I have to say, do you remember when we were strategizing about like how to put the headlines in the hot seat? Like, okay, we're going to do a headline and then stick to 5 to 7 minutes per headline, so we can jam in like 5 of them, right?
And we did a good job of this.
We did one. We did one, people. So we are running up against time, unfortunately, and we still have so much news to talk about. So hopefully the headlines stay a little silent for the next week, so that we can come back and talk about some of the other, right? You have Salesforce, you have the Google announcement, you have Slack. I mean, there's so much that we wanted to touch on.
There were a lot of good topics, and there's a bunch of new topics that are developing right now too that are going to be really interesting.
How about SAP's API policy?
And SAP, exactly. There again, so much. So it's a good thing to those watching. We are going weekly, people, weekly. So join us every Thursday at 12:15. You will see either all of us, one of us, 2 of us. This is the great thing about having a selection of hosts. When someone cannot make it due to a different conflict, you will still have the show, and we will still be talking every Thursday at 12:15.
What, Thomas? Maybe, just maybe, you'll have the chance to see Pete smiling.
Oh, can we put a bet on that one?
Let's not get crazy. I mean,
I'm sending him out of the studio again.
At least
Cutting
you're not
his sound
sending
off right now.
You're not sending yourself out of the studio because that's usually what you do.
Oh, all right. And with
Good
that,
place to
folks,
go.
There
We
you
are. There we
the
are.
episode is complete.
All right, guys. We hope you join us again next week. We have so much more to talk about. Thanks for joining us for our new time and new date. Until then, we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody, for the conversation. It was awesome.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.